Mojang recently launched a build contest, Minecraft Squared, where competitors are given a custom world with a limited building space and a selection of blocks inspired by 4 biomes from the game. The competition only allows for 1 submission to one of the biomes, so I decided to take it slightly further and challenge myself in the 10 days provided to create something unique for each category. And a nice part of the challenge is that if you do win, you have a chance of being featured in the end credits of the movie. This is going to be my more detailed look into the Minecraft movie build challenge map, and so far we have some pretty clear parameters for the build, and it looks like they're pushing for us to build something that uses a lot more vertical space. I counted earlier and it's 16 × 16 and 32 blocks high, so that's not really a lot of space, and that's going to make it pretty challenging, but I like the parameters. I think it's a really good test to see what builders can come up with. I'm pretty excited about this, and I thought I'd actually build something from each of the categories just for fun and to challenge myself. So we're going to have a bit of a closer look at the blocks since I haven't actually had a look yet, so I'm going to bring you along to do that. Over on the left past this fancy camera we have our first biome, and it looks to be spruce, or actually Taiga biome, which is actually one of my favorites in the game, along with it also being one of the more lenient block palettes that I noticed when glancing at some of the other categories. I feel like it's lenient in the way that there are a lot of variety of stone options here, along with also 3 wood types, so that's going to be really useful. And as we scroll down, we also have a bunch of blocks and items as well. And I think that's something that is going to be given to each of the biomes, I would say. Yes, okay, so general blocks and items is for each category, so that's really useful. It's not just going to be these, but on top of that also general blocks for each of them. So this is what the Taiga palette looks like, and we get a pretty good variety of foliage. We don't get grass unfortunately, but you can still do a lot with the small and the large ferns. And along with that we also get fence gates that will be useful as well. Over on the right from that we have our plains biome. And this one actually has quite a lot of wood and no stone. But in saying that, I tend to forget we still have our general blocks and items that does have stone and cobblestone with all of their variants. So we actually do have stone, so we have a little bit of both. So over here we have Badlands, and it's very colourful. I'm really liking all of the colours that they've added. I feel like that's going to be super fun just to play around with all of the terracotta options. Along with, okay, we have glass, which is a really super helpful block for shading and such. So that's really good that they have some glass. Something I noticed is that they keep adding gold into the categories, so they could be hinting something there to do with the movie. I'm not really sure what that could be. And I just walked into a camera. Okay, this is probably by far the most cursed palette of all of them. I mean, you get tough and prismarine, but it's super limited, so that's going to be really very interesting. It's starting to feel a lot like that scene in Iron Man, where Tony's in a cave with a box of scraps. But I'm definitely not Tony Stark in this scenario. I'm more like the other guy that says it's impossible. But we're still gonna have a go at it and try and make something for each of the categories. I sort of got distracted. I've just been sitting here trying to come up with something to build for each of the categories, or even one of them. But I don't play Bedrock, so I thought it might be a good idea to build some of the same parameters on Java. So I'm going to create a flat world for that and lay out all of the palettes, and then have an attempt at making something for each of the categories, which should be super fun. So I'm going to jump into that now. Alright, so this is what the world is now looking like, the flat world. And we've laid out the boxes for each biome with their appropriate palettes. I'm going to start with the Taiga biome since it was the first one and I have a pretty solid idea for it. I was sort of thinking of making a ruins, and I feel like that would kind of fit the theme since it's in the Taiga biome and there's a lot of mossy cobblestone and such. Maybe something like an old outpost or a watchtower would take up a lot of the vertical space, which is what we're hoping for, since we want to use the space that we've been given. So let's see what we can come up with in this biome. I've used Podzol to lay out a bit of a forest floor, so now we're going to just build that up with some stone variants. There's no tuff, so I'm thinking I'm just going to stick with the lighter stone variants like stone, stone brick and cobble, and a little bit of mossy cobble too. This is what the facade is now looking like, but I noticed halfway through that I started using mossy stone bricks and cracked stone bricks out of nowhere, which is not allowed, so I'm going to have to go in and remove them all. But aside from that, it's already shaping into the vision I sort of had for it, being a bit of an older, overgrown outpost that has likely been forgotten with time and reclaimed by nature. Down in this corner I've added a small little stream with the very limited space that we get on the plot, but I think it fits in pretty nicely. And around to the back we have yet to finish the other walls of the ruin, and even though the only angles that really matter are from the front, I still personally like to finish the builds to make them sort of feel more complete. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish that. Okay, we have our walls in now all the way around, but from the front though, I do feel like something might be missing. I feel like the build could do with a tree maybe sticking up through the gap here so that you can see some green sticking out, along with an interior that has a spiral staircase leading up to maybe a second floor that's sort of broken, so that it gives the feeling of being well lived in at some point in time. So I'm gonna go ahead and attempt that now. The ruins is now finished, and I've added the tree that I was talking about before. I think it kind of fills that empty space at the top that just needed some sort of greenery. Something I also just added in at the top here was some horizontal beams to make it look like there was part of the roof left over. We've also got this cut in the stone that creates a bit of aging to the build in a nice V shape here. The interior also now has a bit of a staircase leading up to the second floor, and when you look up you can see the beams that have sort of been left over from the old structure. So now that Taiga is done, we can move on to the next category, and that will be plains. I'm not even gonna lie, but plains was definitely my weaker of the categories, since I don't really know what to make for this one. I was thinking of all the types of things that could be in a plains biome, and I sort of settled on a windmill. I thought that's probably the most typical thing you would see in a plains biome, along with the fact that it kind of fits more into the taller measurements that we've been given. Man, this palette is probably the second roughest one besides the Frozen Ocean palette, since we don't have any wood-colored walls like mud brick walls to use for the body of the windmill, since I want the body to be a lot of wood. So I'm going to have to rely a lot on fences and glass to somehow make a smooth incline, which is going to be really difficult. So I'm not very confident on this category, but I'm happy to just give it a go and see what I can come up with. The windmill's now complete, and I think it's turned out actually nicer than I had expected in the beginning. Up here is where I was talking about how the incline would be quite difficult without walls, but I've made it work just using fences and some leaves to sort of cover it, along with some glass as well. I added in some gravel and some of the wax exposed copper to sort of give it some color other than wood that I think works nicely as well. And down here I tried to make a scarecrow, but since we don't really have any pumpkins or anything, I had to use a beehive. So the eyes are a little bit wonky, but I think it's okay just to make do. So now that our plains biome build is complete, we can move on to the Badlands biome. This palette actually has quite a lot more than really any other category to utilize. I'm especially liking how we have some mud bricks with their walls along with the red sandstone and the granite variants. That is going to be very useful. And the idea I had for this category was to sort of create something from my imagination and just stack some cubes on top of each other and just see what I can create that doesn't really follow any sort of uniform structure. When I think of the Badlands biome, I tend to think of builds that are more colourful and have a bit of a Western vibe or even a Mexican or Tuscan feel. So I thought it would be a cool idea to sort of run with that and create a more colourful style build, since that's something I've never actually attempted before. And I also feel like the Badlands biome is a perfect canvas for that. I just want to jump in before the next build and explain something that may help you when you go to build something yourself using glass. I've set up some nice blends of colours that I'm planning on using for the next build, and these palettes will be quite simple and limited since we are working with minimal blocks within this challenge, but I feel like it's good enough just to be able to see what I'm talking about. So if we come over to the first swatch, and if I were to ask you what colour is not blending in with the other colours as nicely, you'd probably be able to tell me it's the red terracotta. So to fix this and blend it in when building, we can use glass as a very helpful tool. Once we figure out what colour is not meshing well, the next question would then be what glass do we choose to blend it in with. Now for me, this all depends on the warmth and the coolness of the colours. And we actually have a perfect example of warm and cool right next to each other. So for our warm swatch here, you may be thinking that orange glass would tone down the red, but the orange actually makes the red look even more contrasted to the other colours since it is quite bright. So it does take a little bit of playing around with glass and getting familiar with the brightness of each glass pane and how they kind of meld with different colours. So for this one, I'd be leaning more towards red glass panes, and you can immediately see that it softens the colour and it gives it a much smoother gradient. So here's what the rest of the swatches look like now that the glass has been added. And this is just a bit of a snippet of the possibilities that you have when texturing with glass. You can see the before and after here and how clear of a difference it actually makes to softening those colours. So hopefully this is something you can start applying to your own building if you were interested in using glass as shading. So I'm going to jump straight into designing my build for the Badlands category. This is what we have so far for the Badlands biome. I've created some different shapes kind of stacked on top of each other, and I've also played around with some of the colouring using terracotta blocks and glass panes. They're still subject to change later, but I'm liking the order of the colours so far. Something though that I'm not really liking is how thick this right hand side is. It's definitely taking away from the left tower a little too much. So my idea is to shift the middle yellow cube to the right to offset it so that it creates a shape like this and almost looks like the tower is leaning. I think that might just harmonize the overall shape a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and add that change to the build and see if it makes a little bit of a difference visually. We also have the entire back of the exterior to color as well. That's looking pretty messy. So I'm going to go ahead and add in all of those changes now and color the build. Here's what the terracotta build is now looking like. We now have this left-hand side tower that has a really nice gradient. I really like the gradient going from the light grey terracotta up into the green. I think that's a really nice palette. And up above we have a little smaller tower here that goes from green to purple, using some brown stained glass just to blend that in a little bit. And even though we don't really need to texture the sides that aren't seen, I just thought it would be nice to kind of finish them off a little bit. So around to the right hand side, we have some coloring going on here. And I'm trying to make use of the glazed terracotta, so I've been putting that in here and there. And that can especially be seen around to the back, where I've used some brown glazed terracotta. I do think the colors on the right hand side are sort of a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to lessen that a little bit with hopefully some copper and other blocks just to dampen the colors down just slightly, since I do keep forgetting that I have access to all of the stone variants as well. So I'm going to rework some of the roofs along with adding an interior to finish it off. Alright, so the final touches have been added now to the Badlands build, and I think I much prefer the roofs with the little hints of grey in them. I've also added some little plants and light fixtures along the walls, along with a bit of an interior that I didn't film designing since I thought it would just be a little bit too tedious, but it's very simple and plain anyway. We have a staircase leading down to the basement area and all of the rooms connecting. And as we move up the spiral staircase, it leads all the way to the roof where we can access the top tower, and that also has very limited space as well. So this is what it's looking like, and I'm very proud of this one. I think this might be my favorite so far. So with our Badlands category complete, we can move on to our last category, and that is going to be the Frozen Ocean. Frozen Ocean is probably going to be very challenging with the block palette that we do have. I was thinking of different ideas for this one, and I ran through a bunch of different designs that I thought would fit into a frozen ocean, like maybe a fishing hut or something, but I did end up settling on making a lighthouse, since that would probably take up the most room vertically, which is what we want. So let's go ahead and jump into designing that. For starters, I've lined the whole base with some barriers for the water, and I'm going to create a bit of an icy base to emulate the frozen ocean biome to place our lighthouse on. And we're going to use the blocks given like the ice and packed ice for this. Now that we have a bit of a space for the lighthouse, we can start by building the base up, and to do that I'm using polished tuff and polished tuff bricks to make a bit of a base along with a little bit of an entryway. As I'm building up, I'm adding in iron blocks, and I was doing this and starting to realize how difficult the blending would be just using iron blocks. So it's pushing me to get a little bit more creative and add in some shades that are slightly off-white to blend that in. I always try to get a little bit of a shape down before going in and colouring too heavily. So now that we have a shape, I'm adding in some of the darker blocks just so there's a bit of a gradient from the iron, so it's not such a harsh cutoff. I was kind of thinking, just to make this bit more interesting, I could sort of make the lighthouse look a little bit frozen over. I thought that might bring just a bit of a unique feel to it, so I'm going to build up some of the ice here and see if I can give it a real frozen over look. Okay, the body has quite a lot of shading now and shape to it that I'm quite happy with. So I'm going to move on to the top part here, and this might be a little bit challenging considering the space given, but we'll see what I can come up with for the lamp room. This is the final product of my lighthouse, and I'm actually really proud of this one. I feel like it did a pretty decent job with the palette that was given, and this is what all 4 of them are looking like now. And here's a final little showcase of them all within their biomes in Minecraft. That is all 4 of our builds complete for this movie build challenge. I'd love to hear some feedback down below on which one of the builds is your favourite out of the 4. And I really appreciate you watching and being a part of this. And that's it for today's video, so I hope to see you soon in the next one.